Welcome to EdTech Speaks, a podcast bringing guests together to share their expertise and advice on navigating business and education in a technology-driven world. From entrepreneurs to vendors, higher education to corporate leaders, we'll uncover their perspective regarding the latest trends and technologies impacting your career or business. Our podcast is made possible by Downing EdTech Consulting, where people and technology connect. Hosted by Cher Downing, an experienced executive spanning a higher education and corporate career with specific focus on the EdTech industry. Dr. Downing is also an international and national presenter, author, and regular media contributor. Now here is your host, EdTech strategist, Dr. Cher Downing.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to EdTech Speaks, a podcast where we bring guests to share their expertise and advice on navigating business and education in a technology-driven world. Our goal is to provide you with the options for products, services, and knowledge that can help benefit you or your business. I'm Cher Downing, your host, and I want to introduce today's guest, Xenia Muether. Welcome, Xenia.
Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
So Xenia is with Pink Orange Media. Love the name. And we're going to start off by having you explain what Pink Orange is.
Thanks. Thank you for that compliment. I'm glad. It was a very random choice of name, I have to admit. So I'm glad it becomes a more established brand now. But yeah, we are a performance marketing agency dedicated to the education sector, basically. And so what that means is we work with higher education institutions, but also further education providers, sometimes coding bootcamp providers or edtech companies. So anything education related, really. And pretty much with companies all over the globe, which is very exciting. And yeah, as I said, we're a performance marketing agency. So that's kind of the angle we have. And we focus mainly on student recruitment numbers. So filling cohorts and filling courses with the right people for our clients.
Well, and so for our listeners, as all of you know, whether you're working with EdTech startups and getting involved in higher ed or in K through 12, or if you're in higher ed, the name of the game is always people sitting in seats. Has been for years, continues to be now, and is much harder now because everyone can get really pulled off to the side by lots of different distractions and interests and finding things that they need to do and figuring out where they want to go. So it's very hard for educational institutions to find that right market and to get in front of the right people. So talk to us a little bit about how you do that.
Yes, absolutely. And you're totally right. I think, with everything or the digital world evolving and people being distracted by tons of adverts and the decision-making process being so long as well when it comes to education, that's one of the issues that most of our clients face when they initially come to us. I want to believe that the way that we specialize in education obviously helped us really understand that decision-making process and what that conversion funnel looks like. And it is very, very different to, retail and e-commerce and all of that stuff. That decision-making process can take 18 months and longer, depending on the degree that a university or school is selling. And we find that often it comes down to schools really struggling with understanding, first of all, their student personas, but then also understanding their recruitment markets, especially when we're trying to go global and we're trying to diversify our student body, and then translating those insights and those findings into really high performing marketing campaigns. And so that's what we really focus on. We help our clients understand those things. We help them do the research, and we help them create those high performing, high converting campaigns, and paid advertising campaigns across those different channels.
So talk to us a little bit about this, and I have a really vested interest in this because many years ago, when my career first started, I was in admissions. So this is my bailiwick of understanding. To this day, I still am all about the recruitment process and funnel. But let's talk a little bit about personas. What are you seeing in students currently, and what's really attracting them?
I think it very much depends on the generation that you're recruiting, to be fair. Gen Z is very, very different to the millennials. And so there's very different kind of like pain points that they come with. And I think that is actually often the problem. In marketing teams, you often have people that don't fit into that generational bracket. And so they create campaigns that they think would work, be based on their experience, based on what they care about, or based on what they think those students care about. And that, again, then often creates that problem. I think, again, like, it's really important to go really into those pain points of those students. Like, why are they considering a degree? What is the return on investment for them in this day and age, right? Like, it's very different to maybe 20 or 30 years ago. And what do they care about? And how can I translate that into marketing messaging that really resonates? I think when it comes to education, at the end of the day, what you want to do is create some sort of emotional connection with them. You want them to feel safe. You want them to feel like you're the right place for them. It's one of the biggest decisions that those kids will ever make in their life. It really sets them up for their future. And making sure that you talk to them in the right tone, but also, yeah, as I said, like, make them feel safe and make them feel like they're in the right place is incredibly important.
And I think, what's interesting is we've become a society of taking recommendations from other people. We may not even know them, but because they post something, we start to rely on them. We start to hear what their opinions are of things. And so that becomes also a difficult situation for schools to go up against, because they may think they have the best, career services, for example. And you may see people posting saying, oh, no, this place doesn't help you at all, or I didn't have a good experience. And students take that to heart, prospective students. So, I think you're absolutely right. It's getting that understanding, but also watching, what's out there, what's already existing in your institutional footprint. What are some of the things that you do helping with that?
First of all, I couldn't agree more. Like, that's a massive problem, I want to say. It's just it kind of like taking what you have or taking what you've done in the past and just replicating it over and over again, and kind of like relying on like that working. And as I said before, like, a lot of our work goes into like international student recruitment. Lots of our clients come to us with the same problem in the beginning, saying we really want to diversify our student body, but we just don't know where to start. Breaking into new markets is hard, especially if you don't have a presence there. And you have to build that initial kind of like brand awareness. But yeah, then what we often find is, we've done this campaign in the UK and we just don't understand why it doesn't work in Nigeria. You're like, well, there's loads of reasons. But you really have to be mindful of those cultural nuances and making sure that you understand them. Besides that, when it comes to higher ed specifically, and maybe, the undergraduate degrees, parents are the secondary decision makers. So that they are heavily involved in that process. And again, like, parents of a Nigerian undergraduate student will have very different reasons and concerns as to maybe parents of an Indian student. And so to really understand that and build your marketing messaging around that is kind of like one of our key areas that we work in.
And I think, when you talk about parents, there's also a concern. Students nowadays have the whole world to look at. 30 years ago, it was much more difficult to go overseas and go to school, or to spend the money to, move across the ocean and do something different. But today's parents are much more mobile than parents used to be, and therefore the opportunities for students are much more. So talk to us a little bit about, when you're working with those global audiences, are there trends that you're seeing right now because of this change in our mobility and our interest in sometimes just getting as far away as possible, maybe, from our parents?
Yes, absolutely. I think one really crucial part to keep in mind as well is, like, we have globally seen a growing middle class. And so with that comes, more confidence or financial confidence in sending your kids abroad and get the best education they possibly could. And so there are all of a sudden a lot of new markets that we can recruit from that we in the past maybe couldn't recruit from. And that opens up a whole world of opportunities, but with that come a lot of problems, obviously. And then I think, yeah, besides that, it's obviously, students they have so many opportunities right in front of them, and they need to make a decision, and making that decision can be incredibly hard. So again, for you to stand out with the right messaging and with the right, obviously, targeting and also creatives, but overall kind of like funnel that you create is so important. You don't want to, and I said that before, in education, it's the conversion or the sales funnel, if you want, so much longer than with any other product. It's such a different product than anything else. And so we are not about creating one touch point and then just fingers crossed hoping for the best they choose us, but instead we want to make sure that we almost hold their hand throughout that decision making process, and we want to be there and we want to make them feel like they're making the right decision. And so it's, when it comes to marketing, higher education or education in general, really, it's about creating multiple touch points and making them align, and therefore creating that really, really good student recruitment experience.
And when you talk about a touch point, give us some examples of what those might be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it comes down to, when we talk about marketing campaigns, we talk about top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, or general marketing campaigns too. And I think in the past, or at least the experience I have working also in-house for an international business school, there was a heavy focus on bottom of funnel, like let's get them in, like let's get them to convert, let's get them to sign up. But with that comes rather poor lead quality, because you get those people to initially download a brochure or start an application, but they're actually not quite sure. They don't know whether you're the right choice for them. And the top of funnel marketing has been so neglected over such a long time. And we've definitely seen a shift of institutions globally making an effort to build more brand awareness and add more value first before they ask for anything in return. And that really has shown to pay off. And so, with top of funnel content, that could be just blog articles, that could be, interviews with current students, that could be, video interviews with faculty, or like a video campus tour. So there's so many things that we can do to get people like hooked almost. And then it's the time to say, okay, how do you feel about downloading the brochure? How do you feel about signing up to an online webinar or like an online masterclass? How do you feel about talking to an enrollment advisor? But again, like getting that balance right, I think, is incredibly important. And there's definitely been a shift with a much, much bigger focus on that top of funnel brand awareness, instead of just pushing really hard and spending a lot of money on, bottom of funnel Google search campaigns that only get you so far.
I do remember every year using, the glossy photos in a view book and sending massive amounts of those out, just tens of thousands, hoping, it's like fishing, just hoping someone will pick it.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, we're lucky that, obviously we now live in a world where we are so data centric, and we have the ability to kind of like record all of those different touch points and collect their data and really understand what works and what doesn't. And back then it was very different. And I agree with you, like, I don't know how many of the schools that we work with really still use like printed brochures versus the online or like the digital versions. But back then it was different. Like you had an initial interest, or you bought a list of like, student leads from US or top MBA or whatever, and then send out a brochure and just hope that someone was interested. And then obviously, as that's offline, you also can't really, track and record that touch point either. So it's interesting.
Well, and as you were talking through, I was thinking of college football season has started here in the U.S., and I've been paying particular attention to the school ads that they're running, the promos in between commercial time, because they used to be all about athletics. They were all about, here's the school, you're watching our football game, here's our team and what we do, and here's all of our other sports. Now you're seeing these promos exactly as you're talking about. Here's our research. Here's our students out, study abroad, doing all of these things in a, 30-second spot. I'm seeing all of the opportunities at an institution. Absolutely. And I'm seeing student reactions.
Yeah, it's great. And I think that's such an that was for a long time such an untapped opportunity to really, focus on other things that you're great at. And studying and like going to university is not just about, that one thing. It's about the connections you make. It's about the people you meet. It's about the network that you build. It's about the friends that you make. And it's about faculty. It's about your chances, employability, for employment afterwards and stuff like that. So all of those things are great, selling points if you use them in the right way and you create marketing campaigns around that. And I think the combination of all of them is what makes it really, really powerful, right? Like having different aspects and trying different things and showing different selling points, and the combination of that is what's really strong.
So let's talk about, I guess it would be the elephant in the admissions room, which is people taking a gap year. Once the pandemic hit and everybody stayed at home, it really kind of kicked off students going, do I want to go back to school? And then for that matter, what do I really want to do? What do I really want to be? And so we've seen an increase in students taking a gap year. How are you dealing with helping institutions work through that?
You're totally right. It's been a big conversation across all of our clients. But again, I think it comes down to like creating the right campaigns around that and the right communication around that. I think what we have to keep in mind, and as we touched on earlier, there's so many opportunities that these kids have. And I think often, or these days anyways, people question whether there is, or the return of investment on that educational degree is really worth it. And, there's so much content out there, there's so much knowledge out there, you can pretty much learn anything you want yourself. And then there's so many short courses and 1-year degrees and whatnot. And so many more employers also that don't really demand a university degree anymore, depending on the field that you want to work in. So it's something that is important to address, definitely. I think what we've seen work really, really well are kind of like employment reports or like alumni reports, like showcasing how your alumni have progressed in the workforce and like what they're doing now and all of the cool stories that they have to share, and like again get people excited about university life and get them excited about the opportunities that await post-graduation. And again, all the other things that come with studying. It's not just sitting in class and in a lecture and learning, but it's also the friends you make, it's the connections you make, it's the network you build, and it's important to highlight that too.
And I think that is so true, because I think we often do get focused on the degree only. And ironically, when you go to graduate school, you tend to think of it more as professional career, building a network. But when you're an undergrad, it really seems to focus entirely on the degree. And you're right. There's a much bigger learning curve from it. But if you don't highlight that, then you do kind of lose the focus.
Totally. Absolutely. It's so important.
So let's talk about, we've talked about obviously being on campus. We've talked about, are you taking a gap year? But let's talk about the other issue, which is lots of schools offering more and more online or hybrid opportunities, and how that's changed how we market.
Yeah. I want to say, I wouldn't want to frame it as a problem, in the sense that I think it's great that we have that flexibility now. And I think it's great that students do, because that also means with online learning, we've reached so many more people that maybe otherwise wouldn't have been able, to come to campus or to pursue that degree. So with that come loads of opportunities. I think, studying online is tough, right? Like it's not, we don't want to sugarcoat it, like having that kind of like willpower and, really sitting yourself down and getting stuff done on your own, kind of like, sometimes, you have your own kind of like at your own pace, and you don't have deadlines the way that you do maybe if you were to study on campus. And that is really, really tough. And so I think one thing that, again, I think loads of institutions unfortunately are neglecting is student comms. It's like the existing enrolled students, and like the way that you communicate with them and the conversations that you start with them. and keeping them close, and, you know, again, building that relationship with existing students and making them feel like we're here, we're with you, you're not on your own, even though you maybe study online. We are all in this together, and like we're here to help you is so important as well. And it's not just about getting them in, it's about getting them through, and it's about then to ensure that they had a great experience, because they will be your biggest, you know, they will be your biggest marketing source if you do it the right way. So yeah, I think communication and or ongoing communication when people are in class, no matter if online or on campus, is incredibly important.
And I think you're so right, because when you think about, for example, when you stay at a hotel, they don't just check you in and leave you. You know, there's a constant checkpoint. There's constant things they do for you. There's little niceties that they bring to you or give to you. They are following you all the way through the journey. And then once you check out, you immediately get that, how did we do? Here's our, you know, our survey. What would you recommend? You know, what did you enjoy here? And you're right. We don't do that often once we get them onto the campus or enrolled in whatever format that it is. We move on and we look for more new students. And so, you know, what are some recommendations you have to institutions in terms of looking at measuring what are they doing for their continuous student?
I think you brought up a great point with those surveys, right? Like, I think they should constantly be sent out. They should constantly collect data on, like, you know, student satisfaction. I think more institutions are making that effort now, and it's become more and more important. And I think it's also a big selling point now these days, and something that some schools do use in their marketing. But yeah, just making sure that you constantly reach out to your current students. You ask them about their experience. You make sure you don't just ask, but you actually, you know, you actually execute those requests as well. I think that's another big thing. You know, it's nice to have that data, but if you don't, you know, get stuff done and like make and implement those changes, then what's the point? But yeah, it comes down to relationship building, I think, and ongoing communication. And yeah, so surveys are definitely a great way. Besides that, I think, again, loads of courses now are online or they're hybrid. But even with online schools, we've seen more and more of them try and like organize online events, you know, and that could be kind of like interactive masterclasses, or that could be just, you know, one-to-one chats with you know, their peers or with faculty, or that could be smaller classes than what you usually have, and just making them feel special and part of this whole thing is just so enhancing to the overall student experience and incredibly important.
Well, and I hope for our listeners that they're also thinking of ways that they can do this with whoever their client base is. I mean, we all want to feel wanted and needed. We want to be thanked for our contributions or for our loyalty to a brand. And across the board, oftentimes that's the piece we forget.
Absolutely. And like things like, you know, student spotlights or something like that, just, you know, showcase them. And like, if you have amazing current students, maybe the ones that are doing really cool things, maybe outside of their studies, you know, showcase them and like show the rest of your students and what's happening kind of like outside of the educational side of things.
And so we've been talking a lot about education up to this point, but let's switch and talk a little bit about the work that you do with EdTech. Because you're talking about, you mentioned boot camps, et cetera. So talk to us about how you work with them and where you're fitting in on that side.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, in the end of the day, it is similar, even though the product is different. It is similar. It's education, and it's a big decision to make. So often those kind of like recruitment processes, or like, you know, in that case maybe sales more, are actually quite similar. When it comes to the EdTech side of things, I would say we are often much heavier involved in kind of like the operational side of things, because again, it doesn't just come down to student recruitment, but it then comes down to student experience, in-app experience, and learning experience and stuff like that. So making sure that learning management systems are working and smoothly is working, and students have a good experience is incredibly important. And then as well, making sure all of your tech stack talks to each other, right? Like if everything you do is online or like in an app, making sure that you know exactly what like a student's next move is, and yeah, how you make sure that you kind of like almost also upsell to them, right? Like sometimes if you think of like short courses or like 2-week, 3-week, 8-week boot camps, they will not just do one, maybe, you know, if they feel like that was a great investment and they love their experience, then this is a future customer again. And just making sure we connect all of those different data points, and helping our clients really understand, okay, what is the best, strategically the best next move, and how do we segment our pipeline of existing students, of alumni, or like current app users, of all of that in the best way possible, and then to then also create new offerings.
And I think that is fantastic because as our listeners know, EdTech usually starts as a result of a problem. And we want to find a solution, but we get so focused on building the solution, whether it's a product or a service, we forget about actually going to market. You know, when we get to GTM, we're more in a desperation spot, and then we're just throwing things out there. We're just hoping, you know, friends and family will tell people. We don't really always put a focused marketing campaign in place, one, because of time, and two, because our thought is once we make money, we'll hire an agency. And the trick is that if we don't have money to hire an agency, we're really not going to move forward as quickly as we could. So talk to us a little bit about the benefits of hiring an agency early on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, you know, in our case, we are super niche, right? We are not generalists, like we are education marketing and education sector experts. And I think that is, first of all, one thing that really sets us apart from our competitors, because we really understand the ins and outs of education. We understand things like the sales funnel length, student pain points, market benchmarks, and all of that stuff. And I think, you know, you can hire great marketers, like, don't get me wrong, there's loads and loads out there, but we often find that the issue is, and often also with clients that come to us and say, we're not happy with our agency, or even worse, they come to us and they're like, agencies don't work, it's a scam. And you're like, oh God, the worst thing that we have to do in our job is to convince them that that's not the case, and kind of like re-educate them on how it should be done. And so if you start out, or if you're in the process of setting up a marketing team, if you don't find people that come with that education background, or with your, you know, or your sector background in general, then that can be a problem, because again, you know, they don't come with that expertise and they don't come with those insights that you should ideally have. So yeah, I think as you said that before, like getting things done and just getting started and putting things out there is the key thing. And we get so lost in like planning and strategizing and what could we do and how could we do it, and we launch it all together, it's going to be perfect. It will most likely not be the case, and that's absolutely fine. You know, it's a trial and error, and it is always, no matter if you have an agency or not. But if you have an agency that really knows their stuff, and specifically in the sector you work in, you can avoid a lot of those errors, and you can really tap into their knowledge and into their expertise. And you know, we always say our main goal is to get our clients to the point where they feel confident to take back the reins and like do it themselves. We are not a forever solution, and that's not how it should be, because you want to grow your marketing team, you want to hire experts, you want to have that in-house long term probably, but we're there to kind of like get you started and, you know, teach you how it's done so that you can take back over when the time's right.
And I think that is so important for people to realize, because I do think oftentimes they think if they buy into an agency that it, you know, they're chained to them forever. But also the flip side of that is resilience. We hire an agency and we're just shocked after just the first run of a campaign, we didn't have 10,000 people show up on our doorstep. So then we say it doesn't work. Marketing doesn't work. The agency doesn't work. Hiring someone doesn't work. We really don't understand resilience in the marketplace. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, totally. It's honestly, it's one of the biggest things, but also something I think we've learned over the years, that is just one of the biggest concerns of the clients that we work with. And sometimes if they're smaller tech startups and they are personally, financially invested in this, it's a big risk that they're taking. And so for us, it's also important to make sure that we build that connection, we build that relationship, and we basically just make them feel like we've got your back, and this is what we're going to do. I think a lot of it comes down to transparency. I've, again, worked in-house before Ping Orange, and we had rather disappointing agency experiences as well. And I think it came down to we had a campaign idea, we briefed that would go live, but we weren't really involved in the production process or in the creative direction process. And so things would just kind of like launch, and then they come back and be like, here's 200 leads. And we're like, okay, cool. We didn't know where they came from. We didn't know what ad they clicked on. We didn't know how many of our blogs they've read, how many emails, they've already received or whatever. So having that transparency when it comes to the data side of things, I think is incredibly important, but also when it comes to the process. When we first, onboard a new client, we always say nothing's going to happen in the first 8 weeks in terms of launch, because if we just launch for the sake of launching, you'll run into exactly the same issue that you probably ran into before. And you won't see the results that you're after. So the first, few weeks are really about strategizing. It's about research. It's about, those target persona definitions and creating funnels for each of those target personas that really, really speak to them. And then in that process, what we always do is make sure that we educate our client on what the next steps look like. How long do those platforms need to learn? How much data do they need to collect? How many impressions realistically per ad set do we need to serve until the algorithms understand, okay, I now know what I'm supposed to do. And yeah, again, what those timelines look like. And with that comes, I think, a bit of reassurance. We've just onboarded a new client like 2 months ago, so the campaigns have just launched, and we've just had the first meeting, talking them through the numbers and through the reports, and very much explained these numbers are, this is not of statistical relevance at this point, but we want you to understand what they mean. We also want you to understand the marketing lingo of it, right? What does it mean when we talk about a CTR is low or a CTR is high? What does it mean when we talk about low conversion rate on a landing page, and how will we tackle that issue? So again, educating them on all of those issues so that they can do that themselves later on, and they can slowly take over. And giving them the confidence that they know what they're doing, because I think that's another big issue. That's like, okay, great, like now we have those campaigns live and nothing's working, let's just switch it off, like panic mode, and then we're just back at where we started, right?
Yep. No, and I love hearing that, because from personal experience over the years, I can remember sitting in presentations where slides are just flying by and, lingo is just being spit out. And, sitting there thinking, I have no idea what they're talking about. And then looking around the room thinking, and no one else does either. And, at the end of the presentation, someone just going, well, marketing's got it. It looks good. And we walk out. Yeah. And I'm like, but we don't, because we're seeing a gap between what we're doing and what the results are. So obviously it's not working. But nobody ever wants to take the time to figure that piece out. So I think educating them is so incredibly important. But also, I love your philosophy of, helping them learn so that you can then turn it back over to them. I think that is a huge fear in education, because funding is always so limited. And when you want that professional help, it's difficult to justify spending for it. There's also a little bit of ego in there that, you come from this expertise kind of level. And so to hire someone to do something must show we're not good at something. And we hate that in education.
Yes.
But, at the same time, it's really hard to sell to the people that sign off on spending money when you can't explain what it is that you're wanting to do or the benefits of coming in. And so I think your company really outlines that so clearly and so distinctly. One of the things I love on your website is you have an FAQ area. And you don't typically see an FAQ area for marketing clients. Usually what it is about flash and here's how great it's going to be. And here's, examples of what we've done for other people. You've gone in and answered those tough questions that educators have, particularly when they're trying to justify to somebody else why they want to do this. Excuse me. So, for our listeners, I encourage you to go to their website. It's pink-orange.co.uk and go to their FAQs. We'll also give you the website on your podcast site as well. But I love things like basic question: how quickly will I see a return on my investment? That's always the first question,
Exactly.
We want to know what it is that you're bringing to us. One of the other ones I saw was, let's see, it says, how are you different from other performance marketing agencies? And we talked about that. Your niche is key for this. But my favorite one here on the FAQ is, paid advertising hasn't worked for us in the past, and working with an agency was only a waste of money. Why should I reconsider? I think every conversation should start with that one.
Yes, and frankly, lots of them do. But you know what? I think, I'm glad that you feel that way about the FAQs, because when we initially discussed adding those, that was a time where we've actually rephrased a lot on the website and a lot of our marketing material, because what you usually see with, especially in the consultancy space, I guess, is me. Like, this is what we do. This is what we've done. We are so great because of X, Y, Z. Look at those results. Look at this. Look at that. And it's barely about, okay, this is what we bring to the table for you. This is how we help you. And this is what your problem is. And this is how we think you can solve it. So just rephrasing that again and like talking to our clients' pain points instead of just showing on a silver plate, look at all the great shiny things that we have in front of us, because they don't care. Like, no one really cares about what we do. Like, they don't care about what we do. They care about solving their problems. And so it's about us showing how we can do that, but also acknowledging their problems, and making sure that they see we understand, and this is not our first rodeo.
No, and I love that. I think the innovation that you bring to the table shows in your website, which says a lot, because oftentimes when you get to a website, it's very overwhelming. There's a lot of information, particularly in marketing. There's a lot of lingo, again, thrown out there. We can create, maximum KPI value for you. And for most of us, we look at that and we're like, yeah, I don't know what that means.
What does that even mean? Exactly.
So I think, you're very good about telling us who you are and what you do. Also sharing some case studies, which is really, really valuable. Your innovation shows not only in what you do, but in how you go about things. I think you are a breath of new type of marketing agency, which is not about selling down, but about creating a partnership and working together to solve something, which I hope, for our listeners, if they're looking for something, this is really an opportunity to work with a different kind of agency. And I think this is something that we're going to continue to see moving forward. Anything else that you want to share with us today?
First of all, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that you can see that we are trying to take a different approach to this. I think, maybe one thing to mention, I said that before, I've worked in-house before, and I have with that obviously comes a pretty good understanding of what those, like what marketers or education marketers are struggling with, plus obviously the experience that we have over the years of working in the sector now. So we created a library of free resources, basically, for anyone who works in the education space. You can also find that on our website when you hover over the resource tab on the top. But there's, I think at this point, probably 90 different resources that we've created over the years, from marketing checklists to, infographics on generational marketing differences, target persona analysis, all of the things that that sometimes get neglected, unfortunately. So yeah, I would definitely say for anyone who's interested or is working in this space, go check that out. It's been received really well, and like I know loads of our clients are using that as well to educate themselves so that they can take back over when they feel ready.
That's fantastic. That's another thing, giving free resources and sharing your expertise and your knowledge base is a rarity in the marketing world. And so I really would also encourage our listeners to take a look at that. You have an offer for anyone that's listening today. And so I wanted to have you share that as well.
Yes, absolutely. We very happily offer account audits, advertising account audits, website audits, for anyone who might be looking for marketing or marketing agency support. So that's definitely something we'd be very happy for people to reach out. I think I shared the link with you for people to sign up specifically for listeners to this podcast. But yeah, reach out, let's have a chat, let's discuss, issues of pain points and struggles that you have, and see what we can do to maybe help.
Wonderful. Well, Xenia, I want to thank you for being on the show today. So appreciate you being here. To our listeners, I hope that you gained something today and that you get an opportunity to take a look at their website, but also to think about their services and think about how this fits into either your institution or into your startup. Startups, don't wait. Get started early. Voice of experience and of seeing mentoring startups all the time. This is not something you want to wait on, or you have the greatest widget that nobody knows about otherwise.
Very true.
So thanks to everyone today for attending EdTech Speaks. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and can make use of it. We look forward to having you join us again. If you need more information on any of our other podcasts, please visit us at www.downingedtech.com. And until next time, keep learning.
Thank you for listening to EdTech Speaks with EdTech strategist Cher Downing. To learn more about the services Downing EdTech and its staff can provide you, find us at www.downingedtech.com. If you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to share it. We'd also like to hear from you regarding any suggestions for topics or guests and the value you received from our show. Check back for new podcasts with featured guests at www.downingedtech.com/podcast.